Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my top 10 favorite TV shows of all time. Now in the past I've made videos about my favorite movies and of course my favorite books. I made a bajillion videos about my favorite books, but I've never actually spoken at length about my favorite TV shows. So here we are, and that is what we're going to be talking about. I was good and organized today, so these are going to be in order from 10 to 1, my favorite TV shows. The parameters around what make these my favorite, these aren't like definitively the best TV shows of all time, like technically. These are the ones that are my favorite, the ones I rewatch all the time, and the ones that I tend to recommend to people. Some of these are a little bit flawed and I recognize that, but they are my favorite and I love them to absolute bits. Okay, so kicking it off with number 10, this is The IT Crowd. Now this TV show has been a show that I have been watching since about year 9, because my year 9 science teachers tended to just put this TV show on instead of like teaching us sometimes. It is a British comedy. It has a really quite dry humor, and I have rewatched this show so many times. Pretty much it's centered around the IT department of this quite large company in England. The members of the IT department are quite socially awkward. They don't really know how to communicate effectively with other members of the organization that they work in. The show sort of kicks off when Jen, who is a quite normal person, ends up becoming the manager of everyone in the IT department. She doesn't realize what she's walking into. She doesn't realize how sort of dysfunctional this little department of people is, and the comedy in the TV show follows on from there. There's not enough episodes of The IT Crowd, which is the most upsetting part. Like, it's really, really funny. And yeah, overall, it's a really brilliant comedy. It has a lot of quotability. I love all of the characters, and I just find it really, really funny and comforting. Number 9 on this list is Stranger Things. Now, this is a Netflix original that came out a few years ago. I got like 2016-ish. Most of you have probably heard of this. It's a really large raven that just flew past the window. It's like my favorite part about living in Adelaide is that there's a lot of ravens, there's a lot of bats, and it makes it feel very, very gothic a lot of the time. Anyway, on task, what we'll be talking about. This is well, it's classified as a horror, but like if I can watch it and not find it terribly, terribly scary, then I feel like maybe it doesn't fall into the horror category. Regardless, it is a TV show that's set in the 1980s, and it's very nostalgic of like 80s horror movies. The costuming in this is really brilliant, the setting, the film, all of that kind of stuff I just love. But overall, what I love the most is the writing and the storytelling. So if you don't know the plot of Stranger Things, it's essentially about this small town named Hopkins in the US. I don't know what state it is. It's in the northern part. We start with this small group of kids who are playing D&D, and everything is normal in their lives until suddenly one of their friends is riding home and he disappears. And this mystery of what happens to this child envelops like the kids and envelops the town. We find out there's like lots and lots of weird stuff happening. I love the character development. I love that Winona Ryder is in it because she's like a really, really nostalgic figure from like 90s and 80s cinema. Every element of this TV show is brilliant and I really, really love it. Number 8 on this list is Sherlock. This is the BBC drama that has Benedict Cumberbatch and Bilbo, what's his name? What's his name? Martin Freeman. Okay, Martin Freeman plays Watson in this rendition of Sherlock, and Benedict Cumberbatch plays Sherlock himself. And this is obviously a take on Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's famous book series about Sherlock Holmes. I really love the way this series is written, and while I think the quality of it tapers off a little bit towards the end, the earlier seasons of this show are just so incredibly good. I'm pretty sure that most of you would know the premise to Sherlock Holmes. Like, he is this really, really intelligent and competent detective who goes and solves all of these mysteries and crimes. And then we have the more normal character, which is Watson, who the viewer is supposed to identify more closely with, who balances out the poor interpersonal and people skills of Sherlock. I think we have a much more in-depth look at Sherlock's personality. He's really, really flawed in this version, and he feels like a lot more of a real character in this particular rendition of Sherlock as opposed to other like movies and TV shows I've watched before. I find it really fun and intriguing and engaging, and honestly it's just an excellent rendition of Sherlock Holmes. Okay, number 7 on this list is Doctor Who. Now very specifically, I'm going to put a caveat here that this isn't Doctor Who from the beginning of time. Like, I have never gone back and watched the really, really old episodes of Doctor Who, but I mean sort of from like the more recent modern Doctor Who onwards. The Doctor is a Time Lord, which is a person who is from a different planet. They have a TARDIS, which stands for time and relative dimensions in space, which is effectively their time machine. My favorite arc of Doctor Who though is very specifically the Matt Smith Amy and Rory arc. So pretty much from the very first episode of Matt Smith, where we meet Amy and she's like a little girl in her little Wellington boots, and she is the girl who waits for the Doctor because she meets him when she is a child. I have gone back and rewatched that specific arc of Doctor Who so many times, and I really, really, really love it. Before we move on to the next TV show, I just wanted to pause for a second and say thank you to the sponsor of this video, which is Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people. Explore new skills, develop existing interests, and get lost in developing your creativity. You can study illustration, videography, writing, or pretty much anything. There's so many classes to choose from, such as this class by Roxane Gay, called Creative Writing, Crafting Personal Essays with Impact. This class is great because it takes a deep dive on creative nonfiction, from research to revision, and is full of useful advice. One of the things I really love about Skillshare is that you can learn at your own pace. It's affordable and it gives you the opportunity to join a larger community and support your fellow creatives who are making the content. If any of you are interested in trying out Skillshare, I do have a link in the description down below. The first 1,000 people to use that link will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership, and after that it's only around $10 a month. Number 6 on this list is Gravity Falls. Now this is a TV show that was really popular a little while ago, but I only watched recently, and oh my god, I love this show so incredibly much. There's only 2 seasons, it's really, really short, but it's a really brilliant contained story, and it's sort of unique in the fact that I've never watched a cartoon before that has had this level of depth and foreshadowing and glorious mystery to it. The premise of this show is that we follow Dipper and Mabel, who are twins. They're 10 years old and they go to live with their Uncle Stan in this sort of like little tiny town in the woods for the summer. And Uncle Stan runs this little tourist trap called the Mystery Shack. And the thing is here is that actually there are some really, really cool and interesting mysteries that are happening around the town. It is so wholesome. Dipper and Mabel's relationship is really, really adorable, and it's this really beautiful, healthy, like brother and sister relationship in which they work together. They are very, very different, but they like complement each other's strengths. It's beautifully written. I love the mystery behind it. Trying to work out and piece together what was going on was really, really fun. And yeah, A+ TV show, love it to pieces. Will rewatch it again and again and again. Right, so the next one is number 5, and it is a fun one. This is Game of Thrones. Last week I did a video in which I asked you guys to like tell me what your assumptions about me were, and I would like tell you whether they were correct or not. And a lot of people said that they didn't think that I would ever get angry at anything. All of those people were clearly not following me on Twitter when the last season of Game of Thrones was playing, because I was vocal about that. Yes, look, when I talk about Game of Thrones, please know that I'm talking about season 1 to 7, and season 8 is not a thing that we discuss here, not in this house. But yes, putting season 8 aside and just considering Game of Thrones seasons 1 through 7, this is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. The quality of the writing up until season 6.5-ish was so incredibly good. High level premise is that there is this sort of like feudal society that's kind of like set in like a medieval time period in this low fantasy world. And in so many bits, it's so unsettling to watch because you know that your favorite characters aren't safe, and it feels really, really real. And when someone dies in the TV show, it's so impactful because you feel like it's actually happening. The way this story was told was just so incredibly brilliant. Number 4 on this list is One Piece. This one also has a caveat on it that as soon as I got up to the Dressrosa arc, I was up to date and I started reading the manga, and ever since have been reading the manga. So I no longer watch the TV show. I cannot vouch for what the anime is currently doing. But yes, One Piece is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. I started properly watching the anime for this when I was in my first year of university. I'm not counting when I was like 5 and the dubbed version played on kids' TV before school every day. For those of you who don't know very much about it, the premise here is that we have a young man named Luffy who wants to be the pirate king. He sort of sets off from his tiny island home and acquires a crew of pirates, and their goal is to go and effectively find One Piece or like the quintessential lost treasure that like this really, really famous pirate hid somewhere. That is the premise to the story, but oh my god, it is such a huge, expansive story. Like, the manga just got up to chapter 1003, I think. I think that's where we're up to. Given how many years this has been serialized for, like I think One Piece has been going for like 20 years or something. The fact that there's so much planning and foreshadowing and just like little hints to what's going to happen is absolutely amazing. I love the fantasy elements here. The structure of this sort of magic system is that you can eat devil fruit, which gives you like very specific powers. So Luffy, the main character, ate like the rubber fruit and he can have like stretchy arms and stuff like that. The anime sort of falls down in the fact that because they're pushing out so many episodes of this, the animation is not always the most like amazing quality. And whenever the anime would get close to catching up to the manga, there would be a lot of like filler arcs that you can skip, a lot of like really, really like extended shots of fight scenes that just didn't need to be there. But regardless, I love this story so much. Actually, I have a like fun little anecdote about this. This is probably like the nerdiest thing I've ever done in my life, but I took a class in my undergrad on classical mythology, and we had to write a essay on the like hero myth and like the sort of like structures of the hero myth. I wrote my essay on One Piece and how One Piece securely falls into the hero myth structure with Luffy and where all the other characters fall, and yeah, I loved writing the essay. It was really, really fun. But yes, a really, really brilliant TV show, one of my favorite TV shows of all time, and genuinely, it's just excellent. Number 3 is Avatar: The Last Airbender. Oh my god, I cannot say enough how much I love this TV show, how much I love the character development, the world building, pretty much just every element to this. The premise of this particular one is that we sort of have 4 different types of magic in this world. There's people who are able to wield fire, air, rock, and water. And there's this one person who is the Avatar, which is able to unite all of the different like elemental magics and pretty much bring all of these people together. The Fire Nation is at war with a bunch of the other nations, and the main character, which is Aang, he's a 10-year-old boy, he is the Avatar. He has been lost in a iceberg for the last 100 years, and so he hasn't seen all of the changes that have happened in the world while people have been at war. It is his job to bring everyone together and to sort of save the world before this terrible, terrible thing happens. This is a cartoon, it is a kids' TV show, but this is another one where the world building is just absolutely fantastic. The underlying story and meaning of this show is so brilliant and it's so deep. It honestly has some of the best characterization for a TV show I've ever watched. The journey of certain characters, particularly of Zuko, he's my favorite character. I love him so incredibly much, he's brilliant. Okay, coming down to number 2 on this list, and honestly, number 2 and number 3 are probably sitting at sort of the same level for me. I don't know if this is recency bias because I've been watching this show a lot recently, but what's sitting in number 2 currently is The Office. This is, oh my god, I love this show so much. I've been rewatching it a lot at the moment, and it is just the most wholesome and comforting comedy I've ever watched. And the caveat I really do often put on this is that you need to push through season 1 before it gets good. So yeah, the premise here of this particular show is that there is an office. This is filmed in like a mockumentary style. There's a really, really dysfunctional boss operating this office, and we sort of like see his interactions with his staff, and that is the premise of the TV show. Now, the British office came first and the American one followed, and they really just took the British one and tried to like make it for an American audience. The characterization of Michael Scott changes really, really drastically between the first season and the rest of the show. In the first season, he's really annoying, but as soon as you get past that sort of character change, it gets really, really good. The sort of whole character arc of Jim and Pam and their story is like my favorite thing in the world. Okay, now getting down to number 1, this is Grey's Anatomy. I have been watching this show since I was like 12, which is way too young to be watching Grey's Anatomy, but regardless, I've been watching this TV show that long and I love it to absolute pieces. This is a medical drama which is set in Seattle. There's a lot of seasons. God, I think we're up to like season 17. She is a surgical intern at Seattle Grace Hospital, and it follows her journey as she becomes a doctor. Now, this, as I said, is a medical drama. It's really, really dramatic. So there's a lot of like upsetting things that happen, and there's a lot of death, and it's like really, really tragic in places. I have a list of like maybe 5 episodes which are my favorite episodes, and they're sort of like sprinkled throughout, but they are the really, really big tragic episodes. There's this one episode that happens, I think, in season 3, and I'll put the episode number here so that I don't like give it away to anyone, but for those of you who watched it, you know what I'm talking about. I like audibly yelled at the TV during this episode. Like it was just the most shocking thing that's ever happened in the history of TV. I mean, like more shocking than the Red Wedding, more upsetting. I couldn't even handle it. I cried so much. And honestly, I just cry so much watching this show. Like, I love the level of drama, and it's completely unrealistic that this many bad things can happen to people at this one specific hospital. Like, really, if this happened in real life, these people would be so traumatized. But yes, it's a brilliant TV show. I love it. I've really loved watching the journey of Meredith as she's gone from this really quite young surgical intern all the way up to being this really experienced, award-winning surgeon. I will watch every season. I don't care how many seasons it goes for. I will keep watching the show until the end of time. It is my favorite. It is my #1 comfort, and I just really love Grey's Anatomy. And yeah, those are my top 10 favorite TV shows of all time. I do have some honorable mentions for The Queen's Gambit, The Mandalorian, and also Anne with an E, but because I've watched those quite recently, I don't want to have any like recency bias and put them on the list if they're not TV shows that I'm going to actively want to rewatch. Anne with an E came very close to being number 10 instead of The IT Crowd, so I do love Anne with an E. Please go watch that. It's really good. Please let me know what your favorite TV shows are. If you have any recommendations, I would love to hear them. Take care, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.